Pawpal can be described as a product that provides security for your pets. Pawpal allows you to monitor and interact with your pets while you're at work, running errands, or something a little bit more pertinent to us college students, out partying with your friends. So the product that we made is composed of 4 major components, the first of which being a mobile app, as you can see on the left-hand side. The app connects to 3 pieces of hardware that we've built, the first being a feeder. Oh, guess the bed came too. The feeder allows you to remotely feed your pet from anywhere on the globe, considering that this is all connected via Wi-Fi. So the second hardware component that we built was a smart pet bed. The smart pet bed has a few different functionalities. First of all, and most importantly, it serves as the hub for the whole hardware network. So it basically has a server on a Edison board that has a persistent data stream of any of the events and current states of the other hardware components. The bed itself tells the user whether or not the pet is sleeping, or it also tells the user the current weight of the pet, which is plugged into an equation based on some other parameters that can tell you the general health of your pet. The third component that we have is the smart pet collar. Smart pet collar does 2 things. First of all, it tells you whether or not your pet is within a proximity, what we consider a safe proximity of your household, and it will alert you otherwise if it goes out of that proximity. Second of all, it alerts you if your pet barks a lot. So it has a sound sensor, and you can tell whether your pet's getting into trouble or annoying the neighbors. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jason. He's going to tell you a little bit about how this all works.
So you got, excuse me. As you guys can see here, we have 2 sections up here divided between hardware and software. On the hardware side, our main structure consists of a centralized communication server implemented on an Intel Edison board, which is the first time I've actually worked with this. So this board kind of mediates the communication between the client and the rest of the hardware. So start up top with the feeder. Basically what happens with the feeder is the client sends a request to the board saying, I want to feed the dog or cat or whatever pet you want to feed. And the board then sends a request to the servo, which is kind of like a mechanical arm, and that mechanical arm drops itself to allow food to escape through the hatch, and then props itself back up. For the bed, we just have a weight sensor in the bed, and when the dog steps on top of the weight sensor, we get readings, and then they're passed to the board, back to the client, to tell us that the dog is sleeping and also how much the dog weighs. For the collar, we actually have a wireless implementation because obviously the dog can't be tied down with a wire to the main hub of the food bowl in the bed. So on this collar, we have a Wi-Fi connection via another circuit board to the Intel board, which communicates via the client. And this has a proximity sensor and a bark sensor on it. So the proximity sensor is mostly to check and see if your dog has run away, and the bark sensor is to check to see if your dog is misbehaving, etc. On the software side of things, we have an AngularJS client-side application. Basically, it's just a website for those of you who don't know what that is. What this does is it pulls requests from the circuit board and grabs data while it communicates with the other devices and throws it to you in a nice, usable view, which Nick is about to tell you about.
Thank you, Jason. So, we have 3 main views of our application. The first of which is the feed. The feed is a real-time feed of all events that Pawpal has gone through. So anything that happens will be found in the feed, with the newest ones at top and heels towards the bottom. The second main view that we have is the info screen. This contains your dog's name, its breed, a cute little photo, and more important information such as age, its weight, and an overall health status based off of like, it's a puppy, it's this weight, so therefore it's healthy. And then the weight comes from our weight scale. Our last main view is is the PALs, which leads us to all of the hardware functionalities, such as feeder, bed, and collar, that gives you action items or the status of them. So if you were to tap into any one of the PAL screens, you'd be presented with 3. For feeder, you'd have a button that says feed the beast, saying Sparky's hungry and it was last fed at this time, so you gotta feed the beast. The second screen is whether or not Sparky is in his bed or not, and it looks like he's out and about and he left his bed at 3:02 p.m. And the third and final screen is the collar's status screen, where it says Sparky is home, he's within range of our main base, and also he isn't barking, and he last barked at 6:02 p.m., so he's been a good boy. Finally, we'd like to recap on the goals that we set in before we embarked on this 24-hour hackathon. First of all, the first and foremost goal was improving pet security when you aren't home. We want to know that our pets are safe and secure while we're not home, while we're out and away, and have the peace of mind that we're always notified that if they're run away or if they're hungry, we could be in touch with them. Second of all, keep track of feeding your pet. So, know when the last time you fed your pet, have the ability to press a button from your smartphone and feed your pet. Third, monitor your pet's health. So we wanted to make sure that we could get the weight, keep track of the age of your pet, and just make sure that your pet is a healthy pet. And lastly, be alerted when your pet is within a safe proximity of your home, or when he's not within a safe proximity of your home. So if he's run away, we want to know immediately that he's no longer at home, and we got to do something about that. So those are the goals that we went in, and this is what we came out of 24 hours later. A lot of work. First and foremost, we got a simulated proximity working along with bark detector and smart pet bed. So we have the API set up for a simulated proximity. We also have a bark detector that if Sparky's barking, it will let the app know. And we also have a smart pet bed that knows if Sparky is there or not. Second, we have a smart food dispenser with control from that. So we have the hardware here, which we're about to demo, that shows you that, oh, you could open and feed Sparky. Kind of an achievement was, instead of a weight sensor, due to the complexity involved with rigging a digital scale and getting it to work with the Edison board, we had to opt instead for a light sensor that detects whether or not Sparky's in the bed or not. And lastly, we have a simulated hardware and software solution for the proximity sensor. Due to the complexity that the proximity sensor that would entail, like we explored Bluetooth, RF, we instead just opted to implement the APIs and use a push button to simulate the data of whether or not Sparky is there. So now, we'd like to show you Pawpal.
All right, we're going to give Nick a couple seconds to switch the screens here. Hey, Nick. All right, we're gonna have Jason here walking around, following me while I give the demo to try and give you a closer view of what's actually happening. So, basically when you open the app as the user, this is the simulator over on your guys' right-hand side, I believe. Is gonna get the news feed is gonna give you updates for any of the hardware in the network. So anytime your dog interacts with something or you interact with something, it's kind of just going to put a notification there and create a stack that represents a newsfeed. The next view in the application that Nick already gave an overview about was the pets view. So here we have Sparky, our stuffed dog, and Sparky's an 11-week-old golden retriever. He weighs 18 pounds, and based on those parameters, we determined that he's pretty healthy. So the third view that we have is the PALs view. The PALs are what we consider to be all the hardware within the network. We have the feeder, the bed, and the collar, as we've already talked about. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the feeder here. If you click the feeder view, you get the current status of that component of hardware. In this case, it says feed the beast. So Nick, why don't you go ahead? As you can see, the servo opened the door, closed the door, the food came out, so Sparky can come around, get a food, and in the app you can see that the data came in, it responded, spit the data back out, and now it's now represented in the app. So if you were to go to work and forget to feed your pet, that would be a great way to make up for it. If you go back to the news feed, you can now see that Sparky ate. Nom nom nom, nom nom nom. So, other than the pet feeder, we also have the smart scale, or the bed, which acts as a scale and tells you a few other things. So, Nick, go ahead and click on the bed. Right now it says Sparky's out and about doing his thing, just ate some food. He's going to go ahead and hop on the scale. After he hops on the scale, the Edison board is notified via the hardware connection, spit up into the cloud, and retrieved by the app that we have here. It now says that he's asleep, and once again, if you go back to the feed, the action that just occurred is represented. So the last view we have, or the last component of hardware we have, is a smart pet collar. In this case, this whole component right here is what represents a pet collar. Unfortunately, we couldn't get this around Sparky's neck because it's about the same size as him. But believe it or not, it would be realistic in production to consolidate this hardware into a slightly large collar, but it would be doable. So, the collar has two functionalities. Let's say you left work for the day, your dog's at home, and what do you know? You're going to get a box delivered that day. So the postman comes by, he delivers the box, but what do you know? Sparky, being the big aggressive golden retriever that he is, goes at the post office, the postman. You can see in a second that you're going to be notified that Sparky, hopefully, barked at the postman. Let's see. Maybe. Oh, there we go. Okay, it takes a little while sometimes. But little did you know, when you left work, you forgot to close the door, and Sparky goes after the postman, chases him off down the street. So, after the smart collar goes out of range, he is notified that he's out of range. It tells you that Sparky's done barking, but I find it hard to believe that he's chasing the postman down the street and not barking at him. And after you got back into proximity, he would be home. Hopefully that would be after you went out when you were notified that he was gone, picked up your puppy, and brought it back home. So that kind of sums up the application that we have in the hardware. Does anyone have any questions?
What inspired you to look at a pet use case?
Well, we were doing some research online. Microphone. We were doing some research online, and a lot of my friends have dogs in college, and they have busy schedules. They're always at class. They're always out partying with their friends, whatnot. They have no way to monitor their dog for these short to extended periods of time that they're away. And they do have options that are kind of like one component that we've made that don't necessarily pair with your smartphone, but they're kind of like subpar solutions. So we decided that it would be important for people, not only college students, but everybody who has a job and a pet home alone would want to be able to monitor their pet from their workplace or anywhere that they're outside.
What was the hardest part of implementing this solution?
Well, the hardest part, we spent a lot of time trying to get an official proximity sensor in place, which turns out is a lot harder to do than, it's not hard to do if you have money. I mean, the sensors are like $80 if you can get a proximity sensor between two microcontrollers. But with the hardware that we had two Bluetooth transmitters / receivers and RF transmitter receivers, and we would have had to do some crazy like wavelength measurements with the RF. Or the Bluetooth, we just couldn't get them paired up. I don't know, it's something about the code, and we weren't able to do it. So we had to default to something that simulated it, that we could show our APIs worked, and if we were to insert a sensor that detected range, it would be very easy to convert. Any more questions? I can
Yeah, a question for you guys. So how would your solution adapt when there's multiple pets in the home?
Yes, I'm taking it. So in this case, obviously we only had 24 hours, blood, sweat, and lots of Red Bull. So we were only able to get one pet working. But we could see with the feed, we've kind of constructed it so that it would be made for multiple pets. You'd be allowed to have multiple pets. In terms of the hardware, there would probably have to be a collar that contained an identity for each pet and paired with separate hardware modules within the components that we created. But there would be workarounds. I think there would have to be limits to the amount of pets you have. You have crazy dog person that has 100 dogs. I don't think there's going to be
So you built this in 24 hours. What do you think it would take you to get to actually into an actual product? How long, and what do you think would be the biggest challenges you think you would have to solve?
So the parts that we did in the 24 hours are obviously the flashy parts, the parts that are easy to set up, hard-coded, not dynamic in terms of platforms or anything. You just basically shove code in, it doesn't work, you change it, copy-paste, alter a couple lines, and it just I'm surprised this demo even works, to be honest. But to take it to production fully and actually implement a shippable product, I could probably see it taking about 6 months with a team as smart as these guys that I have, and as smart as the network that we have back at school with our friends, and everybody's willing to help each other. So, probably about 6
And
months.
what do you think would be the hardest problem that you still haven't cracked, or you would have to crack?
I think the actual production of the chips and going out and buying the correct hardware, because obviously we couldn't put this you'd have to sell this for $500 if you wanted to make a profit off of it. Going out and finding these actual chips and having really good engineers write chip-specific code for these types of things and making an actual shippable product that's its own entity, I think that would be the hardest part. Jason has
Yeah, one thing that I thought would be kind of hard with this is we had trouble with the boards going down every once in a while, and with so many different devices communicating with each other. I think actually verifying that it's doing exactly what you want it to do every single time. You don't want it to be thinking it's feeding your dog, but really it's not feeding your dog because there's some sort of problem, or the battery runs out, or on the device or whatever's powering it. I think a lot of that kind of fail-safe aspect of it would be sort of hard to rely on, and that would be kind of a hard thing to do in my opinion. So
is your entire server running on the Edison, or did you have external components as well?
yeah, the entire server is running on the Edison. It just takes GET requests. I think that's it.
So over the long haul then, would you expect that your server would continue to run on the Edison even when the phone is outside the home?
Probably make it a cloud-based solution. So we'd have it hosted outside the home. Whereas the Edison board would be like the central base of the home. That would be in a dog's bed, be somewhere close to a dog. So you still need that central hub. That central hub would be communicating with the server outside of the home.
That way you could have multiple pets communicating with that out of your house.
And it really makes it a truly mobile application that data is outside, or that data is accessible outside the home. Any other questions? Thank you.